The ending of Silo Season 3, Episode 5 answered some big questions, but I think it quietly revealed something even bigger. So today, I'm breaking down 5 clues you probably missed, and I'll also be discussing the unanswered questions I have after watching this episode. And don't worry, this video contains no book spoilers because I haven't even read the books yet. So let's start at the ending of this episode. Clue number 1 is Daniel losing control of the minivan. During the drive, Daniel shares some shocking information that he just learned from Sam. First, Per Stinson, the world's biggest advocate for AI, is funding the very clinic trying to rebuild Charlotte's memories. Then he tells Helen that Per Stinson was aboard the Nimitz, the aircraft carrier connected to Charlotte's mission. But before he could finish his thought, their minivan suddenly swerves out of control. Daniel grabs the wheel to try to regain control, and he tells Helen, "I'm not driving, someone else is." And that line immediately made me think back to Charlotte. Her squadron flies into the mysterious black gooey substance, and suddenly they lose control of their aircraft. And now Daniel loses control of his vehicle. 2 different instances, but the same terrifying idea. Someone or something else is in control. But it's interesting that the moment Daniel starts connecting Per Stinson, AI, and Charlotte's mission, and the Nimitz, that his vehicle swerves out of control. Which brings me back to a question I've been asking all season. If the silos are an experiment, then what exactly are they testing? And what if this whole story has always been leading to some type of AI optimization experiment? Maybe the founders didn't build the silos to protect people from the outside world. Maybe they built them to help create the perfect laboratory for an AI, a place where every variable can be controlled, every human behavior could be measured, and every generation used to teach the algorithm how to better manage civilization. And if that's true, then every rebellion and every reset and every tragedy we watched was never just history. It was data. Data being collected so the algorithm could refine its model of humanity with every generation. And if that first clue made me question how much control the algorithm really has, then this next clue made me question whether Sims has been quietly outplaying everyone. He's been secretly keeping Bernard alive, hiding him from Camille, working with Nurse Amy to switch Juliette's memory pills and help her escape. And he even made sure that Juliette became mayor, making her essentially unkillable. So that's not just one lie, that's an entire operation, which raises a huge question. How did the algorithm allow all of this to happen? Either it has blind spots or it intentionally allows certain moves to play out. And that fits a pattern that we've been seeing all season. And you know what else really clicked for me? I've been seeing a lot of viewers say that Sims is difficult to read. He's monotone, he's emotionless. I wonder if that's exactly how he survived. If you spent your entire life serving a system that can measure your breathing, your heart rate, wouldn't you learn to hide what you're really thinking? Maybe that's been Sim's greatest strength all along. Not his authority, but his self-control. And that's why I don't think he's chosen a side. I don't have enough information yet to say that he's betraying his wife Camille, but I think he's protecting his son and Camille from a full reset or the safeguard procedure being activated. So to me, Sims has secretly preserved an insurance policy for his wife. And no matter who wins, Sims is just making sure that his son's memories are never wiped away. And clue number 3 is the Pez dispenser. For most of the episode, they try to trigger Juliette's memory with relic after relic. They use her childhood toys, the watch George gave her, a page from a book, and nothing works at first. Then Lucas, one of my favorite characters, he suggests something really interesting. Instead of reaching further back, try something more recent, he says. And that's when Sims, when he was walking with Juliette alone, hands her the Pez dispenser. And suddenly it works. Juliette remembers what she needs to do in regards to capping the safeguard pipe. And I think that this scene is teaching us something important. Specific memories require specific anchors. Juliette wasn't trying to remember her childhood. She was trying to remember one specific mission, stopping the safeguard procedure. So the past dispenser wasn't just tied to George, it was tied to the mission. George was the person who first pulled Juliette into the larger mystery. Without George, she never discovers the hard drive, the relics, or the truth about the silos. So the past dispenser doesn't just remind her of George, it reconnects her to the mission he unknowingly started. But then I started thinking about the dispenser itself. A past dispenser doesn't create anything new. It stores something inside until the right action releases it. And that feels a lot like what's happening with Juliette's memories. They were never completely gone. They were locked away, waiting for the right trigger to release them, which raises another question. If memories are being locked away instead of erased, what exactly is doing the locking? I've been wondering for weeks if the answer is nanotechnology, because AI by itself can't alter a human brain. It needs a physical way to interact with people. So what if the algorithm is the brain and the nanotechnology is the hands? And speaking of physical, I love the contrast the writers created in this episode. We see that Daniel loses control because of something digital, possibly AI, while Juliette begins to regain control because of something physical. One system uses technology to take control away, and the other uses a simple object to help take it back. Which leads us to clue number 4, the expiration date of the silos. Now, I think there's a much bigger clue hidden in Carla's conversation with Sheriff Billings than simply who stole the light bulbs. Of course, we all want to know, but listen to the timeline. 20 years ago, the silo had 70 years of replacement bulbs left. 3 months ago, they believed they still had about 50 years left. And that math really does check out. They were using about 1 year's worth of bulbs every year. But here's what doesn't make sense. The silos are approximately 352 years old, allegedly. So even if nobody has stolen a single light bulb, the silo was still only projected to have about 50 years of life remaining. But why? If the founders built the silos to preserve humanity indefinitely, why were essential components designed to eventually run out? The silo could keep a massive generator running. It could manufacture tools, repair machinery, and sustain an entire civilization. But it can't replace one of the most important components, keeping its farms alive. That doesn't feel like an oversight. It feels intentional. So what if the founders never designed the silos to last forever? What if they were built with a built-in expiration date? Because once those grow lights in the farm fail, the farm fails, the food disappears, and eventually the silo dies. Which is why I think the deeper clue hidden in Carla's conversation is less about who stole the bulbs and more about why there were only a few decades of bulbs left. And if the founders knew these resources would eventually run out, was there always supposed to be an end game? And if so, what is the end game? And clue number 5 is the radio frequencies. When Bernard reveals that every silo has a radio, my first thought was why? If the founders wanted every silo completely isolated, why give each one a way to communicate at all? But then I remembered something from the pre-silo timeline, that is. Daniel points out that while the other carrier groups launched 20 or 30 sorties, the Nimitz launched one mission only with just 4 planes. And those 4 pilots were communicating on pre-digital military radios. And it's such an oddly specific detail. And the show didn't just tell us there were 4 planes, it told us how they were communicating. Now, hundreds of years later, the writers are drawing our attention to the radios again. This time, every silo has one. And Bernard said something to Martha that really caught my attention. He told her that she can't hear the other silos because she's using the wrong channel. And that made me wonder if the radios aren't just a piece of technology, maybe they're a storytelling pattern. In both timelines, we have small, physical, separated groups connected by radio communication that operates outside of the normal system. So in the past, it's the 4 isolated pilots on a mysterious mission. And in the present, it's 51 isolated silos, each with its own frequency. And I don't think that's enough to say that these events are directly connected. But I do think the writers are asking us to notice the parallel. The radios keep showing up whenever the story shifts from one isolated group to a much larger network operating behind the scenes. And maybe that's why Daniel never gets to finish his thought when he was in the minivan when it went out of control. And maybe that's why Bernard says that they're listening to the wrong signal. Not because the information isn't there, but because we're only hearing one small part of a much bigger conversation. Now let's move on to the questions section of this video. My first questions revolve around trust. One thing I absolutely loved about this episode was seeing everyone rally around Juliette, doing everything they could to help her get her memories back. I also love that they all agreed to keep one massive secret. Bernard is still alive. But here's my question. Can they really trust everyone that knows that Bernard is still alive? It feels like too many people are involved now. And I have a feeling that somebody is eventually going to talk. And my other big question is Bernard. Should Sims fully trust him? We see that Bernard tells Sims that he's indispensable, and you can almost tell that Sims is hanging on to every word. It felt like Bernard gave him the validation that he's been wanting for a long time. But is Bernard being genuine, or is he simply doing what Bernard does best, manipulating the people around him? I don't know, but let me know what you think. And who do you think is most likely to expose that Bernard is still alive? I also couldn't tell whether Bernard was telling the whole truth about there being 51 silos, because we hear that Martha repeats that there's 50 silos. And then when Shirley and Knox are talking, Shirley says 50 silos too. So I don't know if they're just saying 50 silos because they're leaving out the nerve center. Maybe they're not including that one because it's not exactly like their silo, but something was just bothering me about them saying 50 silos and not 51 silos. Because whether it's a nerve center or not, it's still 51 silos in my opinion. And my next question is, anyone else ready for some bigger reveals in the pre-silo storyline? I'm really enjoying seeing the before times, but I'm waiting for these characters to become a little bit more defined because I still can't tell if Daniel and Helen are the heroes of the story or if they'll become villains eventually, or maybe something in between. And I'm keeping a close eye on Daniel's military friend, Sam, as well. On the last episode, after talking to Daniel and Helen, he made what looked like, to me, a subtle hand signal. He touched his ear, then he touched his mouth before walking away. And maybe it was nothing, but in a show like Silo, little moments like that matter. And at this point, I'll even accept a big reveal about the doctor, Dr. Sinkovich, because now that we've seen Charlotte's squadron suddenly lose control of their aircraft and Daniel's minivan also losing control, it made me go back and question the story that we were told about the doctor. Did he really fall asleep at the wheel and accidentally kill his wife and child, or was something else controlling the car? Maybe it's exactly what we've been told. I don't know, but I'm just waiting on a big reveal. But nonetheless, guys, if you made it this far in the video, please put a duck emoji in the comments and let me know you're still here. Also, tell me what clues I may have missed and tell me your theories too. And lastly, what other shows are you watching right now? I may be covering Dark Matter Season 2 on Apple TV when it drops next month. It's a really good, mind-bending sci-fi thriller. If you haven't watched it, check it out. But that's all I have for you today. You guys stay safe out there. Until I see you next time, peace.